Vi er på TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Facebook. Og ikke glem, abonner. Welcome, Alec. Or,
thank you. I should
thank
say
you
welcome.
for having me.
I should say welcome to you. Yeah, of course.
Thank you. You work at Curve.
Yep.
And what is Curve for the people that don't know about Curve?
Yeah, so Curve is a London-based fintech operating across Europe and the UK. It's many things, but really the way that Curve works principally is we issue a card and we have an app, and our customers can put their various existing credit and debit cards from their various existing bank accounts into the Curve app. When they spend on the Curve card, it automatically charges the card in the app. And with that tech, we can do some cool things for our customers. So customers can move payments from one card to another after the fact. Customers can pre-select which one of their cards gets charged based on, say, merchant categories. So you could say, I want my HSBC card to be used for groceries, and I want my Bank of Scotland card to be used for airlines, and so on and so forth.
Very nice. And I think you also have like a very cool function where you can go back in time and then you can choose one payment and that you can do like Klarna, you can pay later and...
Yeah, exactly. So you can choose a payment to move from... Well, so there's two ways you can sort of go back in time. There's one which is moving payments from one card to another. So let's say you accidentally paid on the wrong card and you realize 2 weeks later, you could just switch it over. Okay. And then the other thing that we have is called Curve Flex, where customers can select an existing transaction and then turn it into an installments loan. So let's say you buy a TV for 800 euros and then you realize at the end of the month that you need that 800 euros to make rent. You can turn it into an installments loan and free up your cash flow to be able to pay rent or whatever it is that you need to pay.
Wow, that's very unique. And in terms of traveling, right now I'm in New York, in your New York office at Times Square. Pretty impressive. Well done. And like when you do international payments, I think that you can pay with your local card, right? So you don't get the international transaction fees if you have a Curve card. Yeah,
exactly. So we charge the underlying card, what we call the funding card, in either euros or pounds, depending on where our customers are based, even if they're spending somewhere else in the world. So you can travel to Mexico, and if you pay with your Curve card and you have your HSBC card attached, you're paying in pounds. It saves you a bunch on FX rates.
Okay, wow. And how long have you worked at Curve now?
It'll be 3 years on March 1st.
Nice.
Yeah.
And your position is?
I'm a business development manager. So I started out as an intern actually, and then just worked my way up. Curve's great for growth, so I really appreciate it.
How big is the organization now, roughly?
We're at 200 people now.
200 people, wow. And I think Curve has raised a couple of 100 millions, and it's done a few crowdfundings, equity crowdfunding.
Yeah, we've had some crowdfunding a couple years ago. We're going into our Series D. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, I would think so. It's an interesting market for fintechs these days, and I think you guys have a very different approach than most fintechs, the way you're structured. So in terms of like Curve gives a lot of benefits to its customers, but how do you guys make money?
So I can't get too far into like our actual revenue drivers, but we have premium tiers where customers can subscribe. We have loans that we give out in Curve Flex, things like that.
And you specialize in the business development department on wearable payments.
Yeah.
And that's how we know each other, because you have partnered with Fidesmo. Did you say that?
Yeah, we've partnered with Fidesmo. We've partnered with a ton of wearable brands, over 10 wearable enablers, and then dozens of smaller OEMs at this point.
Very nice. And you're head of that program? Or?
Yeah, so I pretty much run all of our wearable partnerships, yes.
I don't think there's anyone in the world with more expertise right now than you within wearable payments.
Thank you, that's very kind.
I think I know about 3 or 4 enablers, but if you know about 10, then well done. And I've been working on wearable payments since 2017 and launched with Podcasten in 2018. So I would say that the wearable payments market has changed a lot since 2017 and 2018. The big issue for us, the Berg watches, was that we couldn't there weren't enough banks that onboarded. You had to like go to each and every one bank and ask, hey, can you guys onboard onto this platform? And it was only MasterCard that they had in the start. Now they have Visa as well. But it was quite difficult to find, to get banks to onboard. And I didn't start actually believing truly in the market until Curve came along, because you enable everyone to just have a Curve card, connect their existing bank account, connect that to Curve, and then you can pay with it anywhere. So it didn't matter which country you came from. You didn't have to have a specific bank, and that created a lot of benefits. Where do you see wearable payments going forward? Like, you guys are leading the way, and where's it going?
Yeah, I think that passive wearable payments and active wearable payments are going to grow enormously. I think in particular, there's a lot more room for growth in passive wearable payments, which for the listeners who might not know are devices that you could tap to pay with, like a ring, for example, or a watch that doesn't have an interface to interact with. It's passive, I suppose. Just because Curve has sort of opened up the wallet functionality in something that previously didn't have wallet functionality. So I'm really excited to see the growth of basically what I consider to be jewelry that has technical functionality. Yeah.
And what have you seen have been the biggest changes in like the last year or two in wearable payments?
Yeah, I think really consumer knowledge seems to be growing. 2 years ago, not many people knew about it. And then just this past December, Curve and a bunch of our partners had this huge campaign in London to spread brand awareness. I think that was the first passive wearable campaign maybe in the world for out-of-home media that was of that size. We had posters in a bunch of tube stations and some of the major hubs that you might compare to Times Square, but in London. So that was very exciting.
And that was Curve who was heading that, or?
Yeah, Curve in conjunction with some wearable brands. Yeah.
Okay.
But we ran it, and then we sort of advertised various wearable brands in order to get the word out there.
And what's the reason for Curve going like really hard towards wearable payments? Why do you want to position yourself as the wearable payments bank?
I would say because it's such a natural fit that it would be kind of silly not to go after the market. It's so obvious to me, at least, that as you were mentioning, before Curve, all these wearable brands couldn't have their customers spend with whatever their regular bank account was. They had to onboard to special payment solutions. And Curve essentially enables anybody to spend with any bank account that they want to. And so rather than opening up a new bank account, which is kind of a hassle and you don't want to be spreading your money around, if you use Curve, it just goes directly to your regular bank account. So I think that it's so obvious that it makes a lot of sense for us to pursue, and it's kind of easy growth for us.
Do you guys hold any money, or just like a layer on top of banks that connects?
Yeah, we don't hold any money. So it's not a checking account. It just goes straight to your credit card or your debit card, whatever the payment is.
Okay, so how does that actually function in terms of Curve with other banks? So you have your Curve card, but it's not a bank account, it's just linked to your bank account.
Exactly, yeah. So I can't get too into the technicals, but from a user functionality perspective, essentially you spend on the Curve card, either with the card directly or by tapping your watch or whatever it is, tapping Apple Pay or Google Pay. And then the Curve app, more or less, automatically charges the funding card, and it goes directly to the funding card.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I actually didn't think about it until now. And now you're building a marketplace for wearables, right?
Yeah. So that might also be a world first, is Curve's wearable marketplace. If your listeners want to check it out at curve.com/wearables. Essentially, there's all these different brands that Curve works with. There's watches, rings, keychains that have payments enabled, and Curve works with them. So it's a great place for people to browse if they just kind of want to know what the market looks like.
What kind of products do you see going forward will be on that marketplace? You mentioned keychains, rings, watches, bracelets, but is there, like, are we moving into another direction where we have other wearables or other clothing pieces that will be having it?
I think potentially. A couple of years ago when I first started at Curve, I wrote a piece on why we should enable payments on shoes as kind of a silly joke. And I don't see shoes going on there anytime soon, but you never know. There's not these on Curve marketplace yet, but there's shirts that you can pay with and the cuff. There's a lot of things. So I'm curious to see what the future might hold. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been experiencing or experimenting with the same. Like we cut up Swim's raincoat and we put in a chip in there and started paying with it. And also thought about doing the shoes, like put your foot up here and then pay with it. Umbrellas, and because when you're on the go, because I'm from the rainiest city in Europe, so it's quite, umbrellas is, you bring it most of the time. It just sucks when somebody steals it, right?
Yeah, of course. But umbrellas are kind of one of those things where you're always losing them, and then somehow a new one ends up in your house after somebody leaves it behind, or
it would just suck if somebody took it,
takes your payment, and makes a payment.
Started tapping with the umbrella. Sunglasses. Have you experienced anyone doing that?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Because I'm thinking, like, if you go to the beach and you don't want to bring your keys, you don't want to bring your credit card, and you can just have your sunglasses and tap. And also if you have for public transport, for example, here in New York, you could just tap there as well, and access code maybe at home. And all of a sudden you can go a lot of places without even bringing anything.
Or if you're like me, you could do your regular glasses. I can't really wear sunglasses, otherwise I can't. Otherwise, it makes it double hard to see because I have bad vision, and then also it's darker because I'm wearing sunglasses.
But have you thought about glasses as a wearable?
Not until you just brought it up, no. Okay. But I have seen dog and cat collars. So I guess you could like lift your cat up and tap it.
Interesting.
Which I personally wouldn't do, but...
You saw a video of that?
Yeah, I saw a video of that.
Interesting. I think that's the new business idea right there. Yeah, no, I think it's like, when you look at it, it's more like, how can you show off? Like, we're living in the social media days, right? And how can you show something interesting, fancy? Of course, tapping with your dumb watch like mine, or a ring like you're wearing right now, it's quite unique. And if you're able to lift your dog or cat and actually pay with it, then it would be quite unique.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess what I'm kind of most excited about is the expansion of expression. So right now, I guess not right now, a couple of years ago, before passive wearables or dumb wearables really were more commonplace, you could only really wear basically a small computer on your wrist as a watch if you wanted to make wearable payments. And so many people want to wear analog watches or have mechanical movements in their watches or wear jewelry or rings and not have a computer on their wrist. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I wear a smartwatch to track my workouts and things like that. But for people to be able to wear the jewelry that they love the most and still have functionality is really exciting to me.
Okay, so what kind of wearables do you guys see taking off? Because you have probably a lot of data.
I think rings are going to be huge, and I think that analog watches are going to be huge.
So where do you think the rings will be huge? Like, which finger do people put it on, considering they have many other rings?
So we don't have data on which fingers people put the rings on, but from what I see, rings are in pretty high demand. Yeah.
Have you seen the rings where, like, if you wore this ring, you're communicating that you're single?
I have seen that. Oh, I think it's a green colored ring. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah.
You should contact them and see if, like, hey, you guys should implement the chip in there, and then you can
pay for your date.
Pay for your date. I find it like the more you like go away from cash, the more you spend, like the easier it is to spend. And also if you're wearing wearables, it's like, oh yeah, it's more fun to actually do payments. And sometimes I think you can overspend.
I have that feeling too, but I also blow through cash in my wallet so quickly. Just like walking through New York, I'm a little bit of a sucker when anybody asks me for money. So if I leave the house with singles, I will not arrive somewhere with singles.
Okay, nice. But you've lived here, you're from here, but during the pandemic, and New York has changed a lot since before that. And I've seen that now you can pay on the subway with contactless payments. So that's a big thing for New York, because usually it moves very slow here. And also, like, pretty much every restaurant, cafe, they offer contactless payments as well now. And I think that will be like a huge mover for this market. But I'm not sure, like, is America ready for wearable payments?
Yeah, I think so. So America doesn't really have wearable payments yet, not in the same way that Europe does, but I think America's ready. Yeah. So when I moved to the UK before moving back to the US, I moved in 2016, and contactless payments were basically just ubiquitous automatically then. I hadn't even heard of it until I moved, and it took 5 years for the US to catch up. And so I think the US is maybe a couple of years behind Europe in terms of payments, and passive wearables started taking off a few years ago, and so I think the US is kind of just approaching the right time right now.
Yeah, I think like in the US they're very good at embracing technology in like the big cities, but like actually implementing it in like the whole infrastructure, it takes so much money. Like, for example, credit card terminals, right? It's just to switch over from, you drive the MasterCard and you got to sign and everything, but like now everyone's going to have the iPad or whatever, and it's a big cost, infrastructure costs, and because there's so many businesses and small businesses here as well. So I think the pandemic really pushed that part and made it possible.
Totally.
But you live in New York. I want to talk about that too.
Yeah.
Like, how is it to be working in startup land and living in New York? It's a big city. You're not too many people working here in the US department. How many employees are you from Curve here?
We have about 10 people in the US right now, yeah.
Okay. And everyone in New York, or also on the West Coast? Or
Yeah, mostly in New York, yeah.
Okay, nice. And how do you see like the landscape right now for startups during like the interest rates going up, and like some businesses are very dependent on raising capital because it's very cash infusing. You probably talk to a lot of people. We're sitting at a WeWork, which we don't know, is it bankrupt or not? We'll see, but it's functioning here. But you probably talk to a lot of businesses. What's the sentiment in New York right now?
I think it's stressful, not necessarily from Curve's perspective, but just the wider startup industry. I think a lot of people are pretty stressed with the high interest rates. Tech thrives in a low interest rate environment, of course. So, I would say people in WeWork are stressed, but I've never known a time when it wasn't stressful. Really, in New York, it's kind of a city. I'm from here, so I might be outside of this, but it's a city where people come to really grind and hustle and make something of themselves, and so you want to be stressed if you're hustling and grinding. You're an entrepreneur, so you know, like, if you're not stressed, you're not doing it right.
What I find very interesting, like in New York, is how much time you spend on just commuting, getting around, and you also work longer hours than, for example, in Norway, we like 8 hours is the regular one, but like here it's more like 10, I feel.
Yeah, I would say most of the people I know work about 50 hours a week or more. I have friends working 100 hours, which is a lot. And I don't think any Europeans are working 100 hours a week.
Do you think it's beneficial, or is it like the hustle culture that just creates it, or what do you think drives that?
Yeah, I think that if you don't want to work 100 hours a week, you don't have to. And so nobody's forced into that. At least not in like super high earning positions. So I think it is beneficial. It means that there's an opportunity to make something of yourself if you want to.
So it's more like there's so much competition, and like if you want to move up in this landscape of New York, you gotta put down the extra hours, you gotta put in the work, and that's the only way to climb. And there's so many levels to I guess salaries, so people usually start quite low in New York, and then if you climb the corporate ladder, then you can make a lot more money. So
I would agree with that.
Yeah, no, it's I talked yesterday to a guy from Trinidad, and he's like very focused on, like, okay, he's working harder than ever when he's here, very focused work as well, but also cutting down on all his expenses. So he's, I think he said $3,500 a month is his budget for New York. What do you think is like a living wage for New York? How much is rent if you live with somebody, and how much is your expenses supposed to be?
Yeah,
like, what's
a living wage in New York? I mean, there's different sections of New York. So if you're in
it's in Brooklyn.
Yes. So I live in Brooklyn as well. I think that you can make it work with a fair amount of stress if you're making $22, $25 an hour, but that's with roommates and stress, I would say. Yeah. But you kind of have to. Like, nobody's forced to live in New York. You can live in a cheaper city if you want to live somewhere else. Maybe you have ties here, family or something, but there's ways to make it work.
I see you're a true New Yorker. You got the Yankees cap on, you got Ralph Lauren on.
Yeah, this is from Macy's. So.
Yeah, exactly. I got some shirts from Macy's as well. But you've lived in London. You live in New York.
Yeah.
What do you see as like the main big differences of the two cities?
I think the biggest difference for me is the difference in, I would say, the pub culture and like the going out culture. In London, I was more or less every day or every other day going to a bar with my friends after work. Sometimes people, when I was in college over in the UK, would go to the pub for lunch at 12:30 in the afternoon, something like that. That doesn't really happen here. People go out on the weekends, but every day after work is pretty rare.
Yeah, no, it's. I feel like New York is you work, you go to the gym, or you eat, and then you go to the gym, and then you finish.
Yeah, and then you have fun on the weekends. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. What do you do for health, like staying in shape? Like
I rock climb a lot. Yeah, so 4 times a week or so. That's my main workout. I also like the sauna, which they say can be healthy. I don't know how it counts as exercise, but if it does, then it works for me.
Off the weight. Oh, okay. So where do you rock climb in New York City? Is it like you climb a skyscraper and?
Some people do. That's a little dangerous for me. There's a few climbing gyms around. I go to one in Brooklyn called Vital. It's pretty big. It's in what I assume is an old warehouse where they used to manufacture something or other, and it's all bouldering, so it's not too tall. I make friends there. It's pretty social, so it's kind of, to me, like a city version of a country club where you go, you talk to people, you make friends. Multiple times I've been in conversations where people ask for a contact or for a reference for, trying to find a job or something like that. So it's a good place to be.
How is it with that? Like, I feel like everyone's jumping from jobs to jobs in New York. Is it part of the hustle as well? Like everyone's chasing the corporate ladder by jumping on new jobs?
So I think there's a couple things. The first is just recently there's been a lot of layoffs in various industries, and so you're forced to jump from job to job. But also I think people, want to hustle, always looking for a promotion or higher salaries, and job hopping is one way to do that. So if it works for them, it works for them.
Nice. And I want to round up. What is wealth to you, living in New York and London?
Yeah.
Like, what do you value? What is important to you?
I would say wealth is not being stressed about the potential for things going wrong in your life financially. So as a person who's lived in the US and the UK, I think medical expenses is a huge part of wealth. You're all in the US, you're basically an injury away from bankruptcy, whereas in the UK, you're never an injury away from bankruptcy. So things like that I think are super important. Being able to go to sleep at night and not worry that you or somebody that you love is going to have an issue because they can't afford an accident or to be laid off or something like that.
So the big fear is pretty much getting hit by a car.
Or whatever it is, yeah. Even tripping and breaking your ankle coming off the sidewalk. Hit by a bicycle is probably more likely in New York than a car.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how does it work? Like if you get hit by a bicycle, they take you to the nearest hospital and they just give you a bill?
So a timeline of getting hit by a bicycle might be you get hit by this bicycle, depending on the injury, if you're still, with it and coherent, you might ask for somebody to call an ambulance, but more likely you're trying to get in a taxi cab or an Uber to go to the hospital so that you don't have to pay for the ambulance. Then you go to the hospital, they give you the treatment, the medicine. You can't really have a say in, depending on the severity of your accident, in how they're treating you, especially if they're trying to save your life. And then you get sent a bill for tens of thousands of dollars, which your insurance has to deal with and negotiate. And depending on your insurance, you might have to fight them in order to get them to cover specific portions of the medical expenses. People go into a lot of debt.
So they don't care. They don't take on the entire bill, like the health insurance.
It depends on your coverage. So most of the time they would not take on the entire bill. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm scared now. I'm gonna head out into Times Square and try to stay safe. Like you sort of scared me right now.
Yeah, don't get hurt.
In Norway, you don't stress about it at all.
No, I'm sure. I'm sure not. Yeah, and I didn't stress about it when I was in the UK either. I'm not too stressed in the US. Curve takes pretty good care of its employees, but in the UK, no stress about health at all. Yeah, it was quite nice.
It's good to know. I think we're going to round off there. Thank you so much, Alec.
Yeah, thank you.
Very much appreciate it. And
Bye.
Bye-bye.